So the whole situation didn't just happen randomly. It was one of those slow-burning moments where everything looks normal on the surface, but underneath, there's already a pattern forming, and if you're paying attention, you can actually see it before the big line even drops, because Pearl was moving in a way that showed she wasn't locked in on one direction. She had two men in the same space, and instead of clearly choosing, she was flowing between them, giving attention here, then shifting energy there, almost like she was testing reactions, seeing who would respond stronger, who would give her that validation and confidence she's used to, and that kind of movement always creates tension, even if nobody says it out loud, because the moment someone is entertaining two options at once, it automatically raises the question of intention, like, are you serious, or are you just enjoying the attention? And that's where Brian's role becomes very different from the other man involved, because instead of jumping into that competition or trying to win her over, he stayed composed, almost detached, like he was watching the situation from a distance and processing it before reacting, and that alone already set the tone, because you could tell he wasn't going to follow the usual script, where the guy chases harder when there's competition. He didn't even try to outdo the other man, he just observed quietly, and that calmness is what made his eventual response hit even harder, because it showed it wasn't emotional, it was calculated. And then Pearl makes her move towards him, and you can literally feel the shift, because now it's direct, now it's no longer subtle. She's choosing to approach him after clearly showing interest elsewhere, and the expectation in that moment is almost predictable, because most times when someone with confidence steps forward like that, the reaction they get is positive or at least open, but Brian completely breaks that expectation with one simple line, "I am not your type," and it lands in a way that feels heavier than it sounds, because it's not just a rejection, it's a conclusion, like he already studied the situation and decided she doesn't align with what he wants, and the way he said it didn't leave room for negotiation. It wasn't playful, it wasn't soft, it was final, and that's where the moment becomes something people can't ignore, because it flips the dynamic instantly. Instead of him trying to be chosen, he becomes the one doing the choosing, and in that same breath refusing, and that power shift is what makes people react so strongly, because it's not the usual direction they expect. And then the part that really defines everything is not just the rejection, but what follows, because Brian doesn't just stop at saying she's not his type, he goes further to make it clear that she should focus on the man she has already been going after, like he redirects her completely. And that action carries a deeper meaning, because it's not just about him stepping away, it's about him refusing to be an option in a situation where someone is clearly undecided. And that's the core of the entire moment. Brian Okwara rejected Pearl Watts and told her in a very direct way to face the man she was already pursuing, instead of trying to split attention between both of them. And that's why the scene feels more intense than a regular rejection, because it exposes behavior, it calls out the situation without needing a long explanation, and Pearl's reaction in that split second adds another layer, because you can see the shift in her expression, like the confidence meets resistance. And for a moment there's that pause where everything registers, and that subtle change is what makes viewers feel like they're watching something real, because it's not exaggerated, it's just enough to show that the outcome wasn't what she expected. And from there, the entire conversation takes off, because now people are not just watching a scene, they're analyzing actions. Some viewers look at Brian and see someone who knows his worth, someone who refuses to entertain confusion, someone who saw that she was chasing two men and decided to remove himself completely, while others focus on Pearl's side and question whether she was genuinely trying to figure out her feelings or simply enjoying attention from both sides. And that difference in interpretation is what keeps the moment alive, because there's no single way to read it. And then you have the pride aspect, because being rejected is already a strong emotional moment, but being rejected with direction, like being told back to someone else, adds another layer entirely, because it defines your position in that situation. And that's why people keep replaying that part, because it wasn't just no, it was go back there. And that clarity is what makes it feel sharp and intentional, and Brian's delivery reinforces that, because he didn't hesitate, he didn't look unsure, he spoke like someone who had already made up his mind before she even approached him. And that confidence is what people interpret as strength, because he didn't allow the situation to pull him into competition or confusion. He simply stepped out and pointed her back to where her actions were already leading. And in doing that, he controlled the narrative of the moment, instead of reacting to it. And that's something viewers rarely see in these types of interactions, where emotions usually take over. But here it felt controlled, almost strategic. And that's why it sparked so many reactions online, because it touches on real-life dynamics about attention choices and boundaries and how people respond when they feel like they're being treated as an option. And the more people watch it, the more they pick apart every detail, the way she approached him, the way he responded, the timing of his words, the direction he gave her, and each of those elements adds to the overall impact, because they all connect back to that main point that Brian Okwara rejected Pearl Watts not just by saying she wasn't his type, but by clearly telling her to face the man she was already going after. And that combination of rejection and redirection is what made the moment stand out, because it didn't leave anything open. It closed the situation completely and forced a decision, and that's why it continues to trend, because it's not just about what happened, it's about what it represents and how people see themselves in that scenario, whether they relate to the one being rejected, the one doing the rejecting, or the one caught in between choices. And as long as people keep seeing those reflections in it, the conversation around that moment will keep going, because it feels real enough to argue about and clear enough to understand without needing extra explanation.